When Damian Lillard requested a trade shortly after the start of free agency, most people around the NBA and the fans expected it and thought it was a long time coming, although the timing was a little odd, when it being just the day after the Blazers extended Jeremy Grant to a massive 5-year deal. But after Damian Lillard made it clear in his season-ending press conference that he does not have an appetite to be part of a youth movement where guys on the roster are years out from competing and expressing his desire to win a championship, it was clear when the Blazers, rather than looking to package their number 3 pick in the draft along with some of their younger players for win-now talent, that the Blazers weren't really serious about continuing to win now around Dame. So naturally, Lillard requests a trade and proceeds to say he only wants to go to one destination, that being the Miami Heat. And of course, most thought, well, okay, Dame is eventually going to be a member of the Heat roster, and it's probably going to be happening relatively quickly so both sides can move on and start their next chapter. But here we are, just a few weeks away from the start of training camp, and Damian Lillard still remains with the Portland Trail Blazers without much traction on a trade in the works of being finalized. And so it begs the question, is there a possibility that Dame could actually remain with the Blazers this season, and what would that look like both for himself as well as the Blazers and the implications it has on the league at large? And it's what we'll be talking about in this video. As always, if you're new to the channel and you like this type of content, then be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a video, and in return, I'll be providing more NBA content like this. Now, I was curious what you all thought about the situation with Damian Lillard and trade talks appearing to be stalling, at least for the time being anyway, and so I asked in a community post whether you felt Dame would still be with the Blazers at the start of training camp, which is the first week in October. And while I expected the responses to be slightly in favor of yes, he would still be with the team at training camp, I was surprised by the discrepancy of 66% of you saying that he will still be with the team. And it got me thinking, what would need to happen in order for Lillard to finally be moved? Because you would think trading a superstar of his caliber should be an easy task when teams are chomping at the bit to try to get him. And then you realize, well, it's actually not that easy, especially within the confines of the new CBA, and I'll explain why. Now, we all know that Damian Lillard is a phenomenal player, one of the greatest players of this generation. I still maintain when healthy, he's a top 10 player in the league and one of the more clutch players you'll ever see in the game currently. Dude is a killer in the fourth quarter and someone you can have confidence in taking the last shot even on the biggest stage. But here's the problem with trying to trade Damian Lillard right now, and it starts with understanding the new CBA. Under the new CBA, the NBA has implemented new rules and tiers when going over the luxury tax threshold. Now, the luxury tax has existed for a while now in the NBA, where the highest spending teams pay a tax, which is then redistributed to the rest of the league, the non-tax paying teams around the association. What's new is that the league has implemented a 2-tier system, by which if you spend above these tiers, really the second tier, then you are penalized for your team's high payroll. This is in the form of losing your full mid-level exception that can be used to sign other free agents, as well as losing the ability to trade draft picks 7 years out into the future, which sounds insignificant, but it actually is when you're talking about trading multiple first-round picks to bring in star players. As an example, the Phoenix Suns under the new CBA would not have been able to make the trade for Kevin Durant because they had to ship out 4 first-round picks, one of which was 7 years out into the future to the Brooklyn Nets. Now, that's important as it relates to Damian Lillard because of his current contract. Lillard, who has signed multiple extensions throughout his time with the Blazers, even as recent as last offseason where he signed an additional 2-year extension to his existing contract that will pay him through 2027 with $152 million fully guaranteed left on his deal over the course of the next 4 seasons, making $63 million in the final year of his current deal when he'll be 36 years old. And so for a lot of teams who would be vying for Dame, title contending teams, many of them are already paying the tax. And to add in Lillard's salary, even though, yes, I know there would be outgoing salaries in a trade, is a lot of long-term money, though, on the books that likely puts them over the second-tier line for the foreseeable future, which would be the case also for the Heat, by the way, which is a big risk should things not work out with Lillard. And it would obviously be a hard contract to trade later on, as evidenced right now in the Blazers looking to actually trade Dame. The other risk is that it would be one thing to take a max contract with 4 years left on a player's deal when they're, say, 27 or 28 years old. But Dame being 33, knowing that it's possible he could decline rapidly in the final year or 2 of that deal, and then you're really stuck with an untradeable contract that is eating up your cap sheet and putting you into the second-tier tax line. Now, of course, we don't know how Dame's game is going to age as he gets older. We can only go off what we know of now, and Lillard is still one of the best and most efficient scorers in the NBA, and aside from some injuries, he still hasn't shown signs of slowing down. But we've been seeing this trend of teams being unwilling to trade for super high dollar contracts or even expecting compensation in return for agreeing to take on said contracts. And so as good as Dame is, there is going to be a sense of hesitation of bringing in that kind of guaranteed money given how teams are now being disincentivized to take on large sums on their payroll. The other reason why I can't see a Lillard deal getting done before the start of the season is because the Blazers are in no rush to get Lillard off their books. They are in no rush to move him. Dame and his camp tried to force the Blazers' hand by saying he's only going to be going to Miami and won't play anywhere else, which limits the Blazers' leverage, and then the league stepped in, issuing a statement saying that Dame can't do that, and wherever he ultimately gets moved, he'll be expected to play and report to camp. But at the end of the day, the Blazers can bide their time and wait for the best offer possible, from whatever team that is, not even just the Heat. They wanted Damian Lillard to stay. They were hoping that he would play out his career in Portland, and hoping to make something work. And guess what? Lillard, as of right now, is still under contract with the Blazers. Under his contract, he has to play if he hasn't been traded. And for the Blazers, they would rather keep their superstar, even if he's not that happy, than trading him for pennies on the dollar. And so with the Blazers' asking price being high, probably higher than Dame's trade value actually is, you're likely going to see an impasse where sides stall, and you can see this process dragging out into the season. Very similar to last offseason when Kevin Durant demanded a trade from the Nets and gave them an ultimatum that it was either him or Steve Nash and Sean Marks. KD misread his trade value, realized that it was unlikely that he would be able to get what he wants, and conceded the fact that he would just remain in Brooklyn and be committed to the team and winning a championship. But then, of course, was ultimately moved at the deadline to the Suns after Kyrie Irving was traded. Different circumstances, I know, because the Nets were considered title contenders. The Blazers, even if they keep Lillard, and even with the addition of Scoot Henderson, are not going to be contenders this upcoming season, especially in a stacked Western Conference. But the circumstance aside, it would be similar to the KD situation that you have somewhat of a disgruntled player wanting out in the offseason. They're unable to get a deal done, so they decide to give it a go, and then in season, likely closer to the trade deadline, you have a better understanding of how the standings are shaping up, which teams are going to be legit championship contenders and which ones aren't, as well as those who are right on the cusp and need that extra piece to get them over the top, which is what Damian Lillard could provide to one of those teams that is looking for that player that can help them win a title. It's hard to envision that now, which is why I don't think Lillard will be traded this summer, but in season, you get a better feel of the landscape and what's possible from teams competing versus those who might be on a fire sale and looking to rebuild. Also, I know I'm going to be the minority in this view, but I actually would love to see Dame stay in Portland. Obviously not because I think it'll be good for him as it relates to winning, but more so just seeing him play alongside all those young guns they have on their roster between rookie Scoot Henderson, who I think is going to be a phenomenal player, Anthony Simons, and then also Shaedon Sharpe, who was one of the youngest players in the draft last season and really started making some strides at the right direction at the end of the year that had me excited about his future. Like, I actually think this would be a fun and interesting team to watch, with the young players and Lillard being the veteran superstar that mentors that roster. I know Dame will eventually get traded, so kind of wishful thinking that he'll just finish out his career in Portland and just be a mentor to these younger guys. But I feel like it would make for a great story, and also just setting up these younger guys for the future success of the franchise when you have a player like Dame mentoring them along the way. But either way, I am curious to see how the rest of this offseason shakes out and whether Dame will actually be traded. I personally don't see it happening at least until the start of the season, more likely at the trade deadline. But you guys let me know in the comments what you think. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.